Okay, Oscar nuts. What a fascinating Derby year it is. I'm here with Paul Sheehan, our executive editor, Daniel Montgomery, our senior editor, Chris Beachum, our managing editor. I'm Tom O'Neill. And I don't know what's going to win Best Picture at the Oscars and what's going to win at BAFTA, so I'm going to turn to Paul first. Paul, give us your picks first for Best Picture at the Oscars, then BAFTA, then kind of explain.
Okay, so I've decided just really in the last 12 hours that I'm putting Revenant to win at both. I really think that win of Inarritu at the DGA has made me rethink everything. And it's interesting, last year we sort of were waiting for BAFTA to help us decide, how strong was Birdman? It was coming off a couple of Guild wins. And then they went with Boyhood. So that threw us into turmoil. And they went with Richard Linklater for director. And I almost feel like the BAFTA voters, they did switch up a few years ago to kind of be seen as a preview of the Oscars. So I think they're catching up. And that's why I think that they're going to go for Inarritu's new movie, The Revenant, and give him an award as well.
And let's explain that BAFTA has correctly predicted the Oscars 6 out of the last 7 years. The one exception is last year, as you mentioned, Boyhood instead of Birdman. The BAFTA has about 500 voters that they share with the Oscars. That's a large statistical overlap. If you're just looking for a sampling of what the Academy would think. But the voting is different, Paul. Explain that. One uses a preferential ballot, and the other one just uses 5 nominees and check off your favorite, right?
Right. I mean, that's BAFTA. I mean, they abandoned when they moved in front of the Oscars a few years ago, and then a couple of years ago, they abandoned their whole process of nominating, which was very convoluted and involved long lists and short lists, and they really are echoing the Academy with 2 big exceptions. One is Best Picture is still only 5 nominees, and by the way, in terms of sample size, not only do you have that overlap of members, but the overall size is around 6,000, just like the Academy. They share about 500 members, but it's like that Producers Guild that has about 6,000 that we look to. The difference, of course, is Producers Guild mimics the Oscars in using that preferential ballot for Best Picture, asking people to rank the Best Picture nominees. BAFTA doesn't do that. It's just purely popular vote. Pick one of the 5, not one of the 8 or 10 like PGA has, or 8 like this year's Oscars, and it's purely a popular vote. So that's a big difference. And then the other wrinkle is, while the entire Academy nominates their picks for Best Picture, at BAFTA, the entire Academy does picture, but it also does the 4 acting categories. So it doesn't just leave it to the actors branch to decide what are the best performances. So that's another.
Okay, so the difference is, I think last year Boyhood was the movie that people really loved. It really touched their heartstrings, and that's how it won BAFTA, because they're just picking up one that they liked.
Exactly.
Chris Beachum, I'm coming to you now. I think that the movie everybody liked, the number 2 choice, was Birdman for everybody. Let's say you were for Grand Budapest Hotel last year, or you were for Boyhood, or whatever it was. I think that Birdman was the big prestige film that had already won PGA and SAG and DGA. So that would be your number 2, even if you didn't really like it. I don't think people loved Birdman, but I think they really respected it. So I think Birdman ended up winning at the Oscars because of that number 2 vote. So give us your predictions now for those 2 top awards and explain why.
Well, I've got Big Short at the Oscars. I'm going to follow this PGA path, which I didn't do last year and regretted. They've been right, 8 years in a row. Although I do have a little sidebar on that. I've talked to somebody at an award show recently. I just said this person would be in the know, and I just said, why do you think Big Short won at PGA? And they said, oh, producers, everybody loves Plan B, Brad Pitt, D.D. Gardner, Jeremy Kleiner, which later in the evening, after I was collecting my thoughts, I thought, I don't know if that's a good thing for my Oscar prediction or not, because if that's a producer thing, that they just love this little company that can make blockbusters and can make indie films, to do whatever they want, then I don't know if that will translate over to the Oscar voter. But anyway, I just moved over to BAFTA to Big Short as well. I don't have a great reason other than Revenant didn't get into a couple of slots that I thought it should have if it was really that strong. One of them being Tom Hardy and supporting actor. I thought he would have gotten in.
It's not nominated for writing, but the movie doesn't have a lot of dialogue. Big Short is the only movie at BAFTA that is nominated for acting, writing, directing, and picture. And Paul, let's go back to you a second. That's your choice to win both the Oscars now was Revenant, right?
Yeah, and I think that to the Tom Hardy being snubbed at BAFTA, again, you've got that whole membership. And I think what hurt him was another film that he had out last year called Legend, where he played twins who were gangsters in the 60s. And it got decent reviews in America, but it was a British film about these very notorious London gangsters. It got crucified. I mean, it was mocked mercilessly. And I think that hurt him in terms of getting a nomination for The Revenant, is that he had...
But he also had Mad Max. Wouldn't that have helped him?
Well, I think that as I said, the viciousness of those reviews for Legend, I think, was really damning, and kind of made people wonder, well, how good an actor is he? And I think in Mad Max and in Revenant, it's not a big performance. I mean, it's not a dialogue-driven performance. So,
Daniel, The Revenant is the #1 serious movie in the world right now. A month ago, as the voting cycle goes, it would have been around the time that PGA winners were filling in their ballots. Do you really think the Big Short buzz has held for this month while Revenant has built? And let me interject this other thought, too. I ran into one of the top editors at Variety about in the elevator at the office a couple days after PGA. I'll say who it was. It was Steve Gatos. He's the executive editor of Variety. And he said, Tom, I know why The Revenant didn't win PGA. It's because the movie hadn't peaked yet when PGA was voting. So if they had just moved the voting forward 2 weeks or so, I think Revenant would have won PGA. That said, do you think there's any validation to that, Daniel? And if so, then does that mean Revenant wins BAFTA?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, you ship dates around for any number of reasons, and maybe Revenant moves up to the top. Maybe The Big Short moves down at PGA, or even Spotlight moves up for whatever reason. It's hard to kind of parse out those exact reasons when it comes to something as complex as the preferential ballot. In terms of it peaking right now, that is a good sign for it, but that's also a similar argument that was made last year when American Sniper was starting to pick up buzz, because that was a huge blockbuster hit, peaked late also, just like The Revenant did in terms of box office, and it didn't really end up going all the way, although it didn't have directing nominations like The Revenant does now. But I'm still going with The Big Short for the Oscar, and I actually recently switched to the Big Short for BAFTA too, because it's the only one that ticked all the boxes of writing, directing, acting, and editing. Recently, this past week, when I finally made that switch, it was the screenplay miss that sort of swayed me. It's like, oh, it's not a dialogue-driven film, but the artist was a silent film. That got the screenplay nominations across the board. And The Revenant didn't, and at BAFTA it's even worse than at the Oscars. I don't think any film has won Best Picture at the BAFTA since the 1980s without a screenplay nomination. So it's kind of, that kind of convinced me that, okay, Iñárritu will probably win director, but The Big Short might just win Best Picture, preferential ballot or not.
Big Short is a comedy. That's sometimes a problem, right, Daniel?
It is, but it's a serious comedy. It's dealing with an important issue, which is not just an important American issue. It's an important international issue. The economic crisis could be felt on all corners of the globe. So I think it might resonate for that reason too. I mean, and we've seen American films do well at the BAFTAs of late. They're not necessarily, they don't necessarily go for the films that are more internationally focused. Like Birdman was very much a New York kind of film, and they went with Argo, and so I don't necessarily think that those sorts of factors are going to hold back The Big Short. Although I don't think it's a lock. I think The Revenant certainly, I'm doubting myself about.
Hey, I just want to interject because two films we're not talking about would actually lead BAFTAs with the most nominations, which we always think is a factor. Used to be at the Oscars before they went to the preferential ballot. Carol and Bridge of Spies, the other two nominees in this five-film race. And one of our newest writer, Jacob Sarkisian, wrote a really interesting analysis and talked about Carol. Maybe we're underestimating Carol. It's the only one of those that's got two acting nominations. It's the most emotionally filled of the films. It's got diversity in a way that none of the other films.
But it's not nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. Bridge of Spies is.
No, I understand it, but this is BAFTA, and I mean they might. The membership may not feel the need to be seen as this precursor to the Oscars the way that obviously the executive has by switching the date. I'm just putting it out there as the things to consider.
Well, have we even mentioned Spotlight? That's second in our predictions.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and certainly that the subject matter is as relevant in the United Kingdom as it is in America.
It could happen. It has that broad base of support, but I think they want to predict the Oscar too. I have Big Short at the Oscars now and Revenant at BAFTA, and I don't have a good reason that I could, except that, as Daniel said, Big Short does seem to be having all the key tea leaves, so it's important to go for that. But on the other hand, I think that there's some kind of snob factor for Revenant that's important. It's the big epic film. It's Inarritu, it's Leo, it's all of those things. And I do agree that Inarritu wins director no matter what happens at BAFTA, and of course Leo wins. And I was thinking maybe there's a cascading effect for them. But let's talk about Spotlight. We haven't talked about that there. It's not nominated for directing, so it's disadvantaged at BAFTA and hurt there. But when you talk to very wise souls like Ann Thompson, they say it's ahead for Best Picture at the Oscars. If you look at our top 24 at Gold Derby, if you look at our whole user base, if you look at our experts, they all say Spotlight will win Best Picture. Does it start at BAFTA? Who's got a thought?
Well, that directing miss, I think, is what's really holding me back from predicting it.
Yeah, and to go even further, over the last, not just at BAFTA, where I think the directing win obviously at BAFTA really hurts its chances of winning Best Picture at BAFTA. I think that it hurts its chances of winning Best Picture at the Oscars too. I was looking back, and in the last quarter century, the only film to win the Best Picture Oscar without a directing nomination from the BAFTAs was Million Dollar Baby. So it's really, really, I mean, it's not necessarily a momentum killer, but it's a big disadvantage, especially after it lost, the Producers Guild Award and it lost the Directors Guild Award. It won SAG, but that's the least predictive of the major guilds. So,
but I think you've got to put an asterisk because the preferential ballot. I think that looking back at statistics that predate the introduction of the preferential ballot in 2009 is maybe, and I defer to Daniel, who got 23 out of 24 Oscar categories right last year, only missing animated feature to some degree, but I'm not wholly convinced that we should be looking much before 2009.
Right, because here's my Spotlight argument, and that is it really is an important issue. It's the full A-list cast that we're used to seeing in the big picture winners. That was the tradition in the Oscars going way back, and BAFTA. And it's certainly the most emotionally poignant, the one that really grips you in the gut. And I think that's why most people are predicting it to win Best Picture, because Oscar voters are traditionally responsive to that. And if that happens again, then it's Spotlight. And if it doesn't get the most number one votes, who cares? Because maybe it gets the most number two votes. Because that's the one that
I think what Tom was saying is that the number 2 votes is a key factor that keeps the film in play. Oh, so here, Tom is back.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to, obviously having technical difficulties here, I'm going to switch machines. Paul, you continue to lead the conversation. I'll be back in a flash. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, it's that darn preferential ballot that's really it's making it difficult for us at the Oscars. But in terms of the rest of the BAFTA races, let's just talk about those while we're waiting for Tom to come back. I mean, are we assuming DiCaprio gets to practice his Oscar acceptance speech yet again? Daniel, Chris?
Yeah, we're gonna be sick of DiCaprio's Oscar acceptance speech by the time he eventually wins the Oscar. He of all the acting categories, there's just so little suspense there. Not just because he's overdue, and not just because the film has done well with Best Picture and Best Director nominations, but because there's really nowhere else to go to if you consider where the strength of these contenders over this course of the season. It's just not really there in terms of overall support for those performances and those films.
Yeah.
It's DiCaprio's in a walk unless he does something stupid like at Russell Crowe, he throws a phone. Unless he does something stupid, and he is way too careful to do something that stupid. I think he's got it in the bag. He's treading very carefully and kissing babies, but being very, very, very careful about it.
When he's not vaping. And Chris, are you on board with the Leo bandwagon then?
Oh yeah, I think several of us, after we saw the movie way back, weeks ago, a couple months ago, we all said this is his. And like Daniel said, I mean, not only do I think it's his off the performance and all the losses in the past, but everything lined up perfectly for him. Anybody that was like a really strong contender suddenly had problems. Michael Fassbender's movie tanked. Plus, he's not campaigning. Bryan Cranston's movie, that's the only nomination for the whole movie, and so forth. So it just everything lined up perfectly. Yeah. Eddie Redmayne won last year. Plus, that movie didn't get a lot of nominations. So I think everything lined up perfectly for him this year.
Now, what about? I think Brie Larson may not be the lock that we're all assuming her at BAFTA. I mean, do you oh, Daniel, you're so good with her name, Miss Ronan from Brooklyn. How do you say her name again? Remind me.
Saoirse. She when she was on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, she a handy tip is that it rhymes with inertia.
Well, I don't know if she's got inertia in this race at BAFTA. With Brooklyn, I mean, they're going to make it into a television series. BBC's making a TV version of it. Julie Walters, who played the landlady, is going to reprise that role. Is there potential for an upset in Best Actress? What do you think?
I've had an upset there ever since we opened the Prediction Center.
And who are you predicting?
Alicia Vikander.
Wow. Okay.
And I almost changed it yesterday, but Marcus talked me out of it. He said, if she actually wins, you will hate yourself. Here's the reason.
Now explain that she's nominated up
in lead for Danish Girl.
And in supporting for...
These are the two ladies that have been winning everything lately, Brie Larson and Alicia. So we don't often have that situation occur where two people are winning a lot of awards and then they're suddenly up against each other. Room has one other nomination. I just don't think BAFTA liked it all that much overall. It's just got her and screenplay, and Alicia's the it girl of the moment. She's European. It's just a feeling I've had ever since the Prediction Center opened.
But here's what's wrong with that, Chris. They didn't like Danish Girl either. Why isn't that nominated for Best Actor or Actress?
Got a lot more nominations than Room.
Yeah, okay, but still, also put the two performances side by side in your mind, and you've got.
You've been saying that for several weeks, and it was wrong at SAG, and it's been wrong elsewhere. So I know that it's not the most expressive, over-the-top performance, but people are just attached to her, and.
But Chris, could they give her supporting then for Ex Machina?
I don't. She's been up for Ex Machina at several places and hasn't won. So
no, I just. That, but I'm just saying, if Tom's theory about them wanting to be seen as a good Oscar crystal ball, that's kind of having it both ways.
Well, they just went with Emmanuel Riva over Jennifer Lawrence when Jennifer was winning everything. That was just, what, 3 years ago.
Okay.
The two that I'm thinking about more than anything, as I've been thinking about this, no, not BAFTA related, but just we've seen this situation happen a couple of times. When Benicio del Toro accidentally got in at lead at SAG, and he was on such a roll, he still won.
Mm-hmm.
And when Catherine Zeta-Jones got in it for lead at Chicago at the Golden Globes, and she barreled through the other ladies there. So I've seen it happen before, and I may be wrong, but I've had it as my top pick for so long, and it's my 500 bet, so I win like 10,000 points. She's like 20 to 1. So anyway, I'm just going to go with it. We can't all just pick chalk all the time. Just pick the front runners. It's not fun. If occasionally if you have a really strong hunch, you just have to go with it.
And Chris, I always like to give a shout out to everyone, of course, that because Daniel aside with his Oscars last year, usually it's the people watching this video that come and make their predictions at Gold Derby that'll do better than all of us.
Oh yeah.
And one thing that's key is to break any tie there for first place to get the chance to win the gift certificate is the amount of points you have, and one of the ways to get a lot of points is by putting your 500 point and 200 point bets strategically, like you just said. Alicia Vikander,
or a long shot, or something that's at least not necessarily the front runner.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it.
And by the way, we don't mention it ever because nobody remembers it, but 2 years ago I had 23 out of 24 at the Oscars. And the year before that, I had 22 out of 24. So last year was an anomaly. I hope I just got on that boyhood train, and it really derailed me.
Oh, we don't, Chris. None of us. I mean, yes. Listen, we all need to, be our own cheerleaders. So absolutely, So Tom, basically, those two know what they're talking about. You and I.
No, Tom has won a lot of events lately, and Paul was winning most every event, other than maybe the past couple of weeks. So I was at a party like 6 weeks ago, and one of the people at the table said, I love to see I want to get in there and make some predictions, but which expert should I follow? And I said, just look up Paul Sheehan, and you'll be fine.
Oh, but my goodness, I hope nobody followed me on DGA. Tom knew. Daniel knew Inarritu. I think I went 1 for 8. Not only did I miss Inarritu, I missed every TV category except Game of Thrones. So that was my Razzie winning performance as a pundit, I think. Yeah.
We've all had those too.
So we're talking about acting here, and the presumptive Oscar frontrunner and supporting actor Stallone is not nominated at BAFTA. So who are we thinking is going to win that race with only a few Oscar nominees?
Who are the nominees there? Of course, Mark Rylance, everybody's favorite.
Christian Bale, Mark Ruffalo, those 3 Oscar nominated. Then Idris Elba, who won SAG for Beasts and No Nations, got snubbed by the Academy, and Benicio del Toro for Sicario. So is there a possibility that Elba wins? He won twice at SAG for film, and then on the TV side for Luther. Does he have a homegrown advantage, or do we think Rylance, who's British/American but based in London, is going to win? I
don't buy this whole Rylance thing. There's the groupthink among American journalists that he's going to win everything, and you can look at it consistently across the board. His performance is really, really understated in Bridge of Spies. I think it's between the other 3 guys. I think it's Idris, Bale, and Ruffalo, and you can make a good case for any one of them.
Rylance does lead our user picks.
Daniel, who are you?
And he's a big theater actor in the UK and in New York, so he's much on the radar of the UK folks, of course. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah.
I'm actually predicting Rylance.
Okay, that's funny.
So really, who are you predicting? You're not. After all those losses, really, he has campaigned 0. He's not attending yet again.
Well,
he's doing a play in Brooklyn right now.
I certainly don't think he's a lock. I think Idris Elba can certainly win it because we're seeing at SAG, for instance, how that whole Oscars so white issue. I think that backlash is helping him at other events, so he could win. Christian Bale could win. He's in a Best Picture nominee, which I'm predicting will win Best Picture at the BAFTAs. But Rylance he's a respected British actor, stage vet, and Bridge of Spies did better at the BAFTAs than it's done in most other places, including the director nomination for Steven Spielberg. So I just think there might just be enough support for him to win it there.
And I'm mindful of another one of our new contributors, Amanda Spears, wrote a piece about Christian Bale. In terms of, we always talk about Oscar IOUs. Well, he's got a BAFTA IOU. He didn't win for The Fighter. He didn't win for American Hustle. It may be the third time. I mean, certainly that award early in the evening. If Bale wins, I mean, unfortunately the prediction center will be closed. But I think at that point I might want to be switching my prediction for picture to Big Short. And then over on the supporting actress side, with Vikander out, who do we think for Danish Girl? I mean, she's in there for Ex Machina. Chris, who do you think is going to win that race? You already said it won't be Vikander for Ex Machina.
I'm really both of these supportings. I'm so torn. I keep moving things back and forth. Just like you mentioned on Bale and Rylance, being up in Best Picture nominees at BAFTA. Carol is a Best Picture nominee, and in fact, it's the only one of these 5. So I'm going with Rooney Mara for that reason alone.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder about Julie Walters only in that they adore her at BAFTA. I think she's won more TV awards than almost anyone. Maybe Judi Dench is her closest rival. And she's won a couple on the film side. So I'm almost tempted to put her in. But I think I'll probably stick with Rooney Mara. What about you, Tom?
Keep talking while I look at Gold Derby and see what I'm predicting. I have no idea. That's how little I trust my own predictions here, and I'm probably going to change everything after we've spoken here.
Well, I'm listening intently. I may make some changes if people watch this video, like Friday night or Saturday, and they're going, why are his picks different than what he said on the video?
Well, we talk ourselves into these things.
Out of things. So,
but the key to I'm glad we're talking about changing predictions, because yes, please change as you will. But that prediction center is going to probably be shut off by maybe noon Eastern time on Sunday, because unlike most American award shows, BAFTA is not live even in England. It starts, I think, at about 6 p.m. London time, and they don't start airing it for a good hour and a half, because they do an edited version of it. So don't get fooled if you're looking in your listings and seeing, well, it's not on till 7 or 8 o'clock on BBC America. We'll be shutting that prediction center down probably about noon Eastern time, which is early in the morning Los Angeles time, 9 a.m. So you don't have the luxury of those last minute changes like I usually make, and they go wrong for me. So I might actually do better at BAFTA. So Daniel, who are you saying for supporting actress?
I've got Rooney Mara for the same reason. Carol is up for Best Picture. It's up for Best Director. They liked it so much better at the Oscars or at the BAFTAs than they did at the Oscars. And with that Vikander performance out in the lead category for The Danish Girl, they could give it to her for Ex Machina. But like Chris said, I made that prediction at the Golden Globes. I thought, they're going to give it to Vikander at the Golden Globes for Ex Machina, and they didn't end up doing that. They actually ended up giving it to Kate Winslet, so I don't think I would completely count out Kate Winslet of the BAFTA race for supporting actress. So I think it'll probably be one of those 3, but just the amount of support that Carol got leads me to think probably Rooney Mara by default.
And Tom, are you ready to chime in?
Yeah, I've got, I'm embarrassed to say I had Mark Rylance for supporting actor.
No, what about...
I just changed him to Idris Elba, and I put... I'm moving things around in the prediction center as we talk. We often do that in these slugfest, our viewers know. And right now I have Rooney Mara for supporting actress and Winslet in second. What should I do? Talk me into something here.
I mean, this is, if I was a BAFTA voter, I mean, I would be voting for Kate Winslet.
I would too, but we've been killed on that. There were two predictions I felt very strongly about lately, and of course I just arm twisted all of you guys and bullied you right and left about them. And one was Kate Winslet at SAG, and the other one was Inarritu at DGA. I was certainly proven right with Inarritu, and as was Daniel. I was the only expert to get it right, and Daniel was the only editor to get it right, if you don't count Paul and I in that mix. But I really felt so strongly about the Kate Winslet thing at the Globe, at SAG, of course, because I kept hearing that vote from actual voters. Obviously, I had the worst voter sample in the history of all.
No, but it's, you know, it could have been one vote. I mean, don't forget. I mean, SAG is huge.
Yeah.
150,000 plus.
And you were the best expert on the TV side, so you had a good evening.
Oh, that's true. I did win there. But this whole Rooney Mara thing, I don't know what the hell.
She hasn't won anywhere either. That's, you know, we talk about people going through the whole season and not winning. I'm not sold on it. I mean, if you just said who you would vote for, if I was voting here, my favorite performance of these 5 was Jennifer Jason Leigh, and it got a little more support at BAFTA than it did at the Oscars. I mean, Quentin's up for screenplay, so it's not like they hated it. And it's the most over-the-top performance, but you know, Rooney just makes sense if you're looking at all of the tea leaves of just BAFTA alone. And
it's also if it's like Alicia Vikander in that it's a lead role masquerading as a supporting role.
And she's really cool, and has been. She's in that group of stars who they just love. Everybody does. She's the it girl right now, like Vikander is, Jessica Chastain, that group.
And she won at Cannes.
That's true.
You know, so she's got she's the most European of American actresses in that.
I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah. She's from New York, but she just feels, her whole attitude just feels, you know, European.
But it's a very understated performance. But I want to know, thanks to you guys, while we've been talking, I had Rooney Mara at #1. I put her down, put Kate Winslet at #1, hit save predictions. Now you've talked me into putting Rooney back up on top again. This is how fickle we are, everybody. We don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Well, backing up for a second, I didn't mention on my supporting actor, I had Christian Bale in first forever, and there's no reason I took him out other than Marcus and I talking yesterday. I just started thinking, I don't want to be beaten by Idris Elba again. I think, you know, having just won the SAG, a couple of great speeches, he is British. I know it's not up for really anything at BAFTA other than that, but it just, you know, I know there's got to be people, you know, from years ago, that, you know, still think of Christian Bale as that bully on the set. I just wonder if that hurt him when he lost that year and still won the Oscar. In terms of the British voters, you know, that's one of their own, and he embarrassed them some. So I don't know. I just started thinking about Idris Elba, and maybe that would be the way they would go.
And actually, I just think I'm going to switch. I think I've convinced myself I'm switching on supporting actress to Alicia Vikander. I mean, Ex Machina is up for Best British Film. It'll probably lose that to Brooklyn, but yeah, I think that might be a way of rewarding 2 Oscar winners, you know, and really Alicia Vikander holding a BAFTA, even if it's for Ex Machina, people can. If we don't remember how well Chris did 2 years ago, and we should, we're certainly not going to remember what Alicia Vikander won that BAFTA for in a couple of years. Well,
these 4 acting races that'll be in London on Sunday. I mean, 3 out of the 4 are very interesting. At the Oscars, do we all have DiCaprio, Larson, Vikander, and Stallone?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that those are becoming locks. Though, you know, it'll be fun. We love to get them right, but getting it wrong, I don't think. Saoirse. Thank you. I don't know why I'm having a mental block on that. If she wins, I mean, that'll be fun for the next few weeks to sort of speculate on Oscar. Because Oscar voting, we're doing this slugfest on Friday, February 12th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Oscar voting just went live a couple of hours ago. And it'll run for the next...
And you know, backing up to supporting actor for just a second, you know, once again, as Marcus wrote a great article after SAG, saying how a non-Oscar nominee winning which was Idris Elba, was the best thing that could have happened to Stallone because Idris Elba can't go, you know, defeat him at the Oscars. Once again here, if Idris Elba wins, you know, that's the best thing that could happen to Stallone. If Christian Bale comes up there and gives a great speech, or Mark Ruffalo, for example, that's not roster voting opens, that doesn't help Stallone. I wouldn't say it necessarily hurts him, but it doesn't help him. Mark Rylance is going to be there either way, so that's not going to matter.
But yeah, either way, I don't think, of all the Oscar acting categories, I don't think it's possible for supporting actor to be a 100% lock at all, no matter what happens. Just because, I mean, Stallone, I'm predicting, I think he's out front. Idris Elba winning SAG was good news for him. But, Stallone missing from a couple of these events is still him missing at a couple of these events. So, I mean, even though I'm predicting him and I probably won't sway from him no matter what, I couldn't say with 100% certainty that Stallone is winning that Oscar.
Listen, at the Oscar nominees luncheon on Monday, and you've got all those big stars there, those big heavy hitters. Who was the one person that got swarmed? Stallone. Who did everyone want a selfie with? Stallone. That was Oscar voters in that room swooning over him. So, boy, when it comes to filling out their ballot, I think that is almost as a bigger lock than Leo.
Not even close.
Well, okay, I just wanted to say something to see if everyone was listening to me.
I agree with you, Paul. I really do. I think it is that much of a lock.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we as I always say, we know some of this, but the people out there watching know even more, and we need them to make their predictions so that we can go and look and see these where the odds are changing. And the great thing is not only do we have a top 24 that we showcase that did the best last year, we've now got our all-stars who are the best of the best, people that have done consistently well. The people like Chris, who maybe had one bad year at the Oscars, but consistently score in the top 20 or 30. So we're showcasing them too. So we're giving you lots of information, be it us chattering away and lots of statistics. And I can't wait to see what if these odds move over the next 36 hours.
And for those watching, I mean, we've talked about BAFTA, we've talked about Oscars. We certainly want your predictions there. But Writers Guild is this weekend. You could win a $100 Amazon gift card by getting those right. And it's not just film. We've got the TV categories too. And cinematographers are on Sunday night. So
and the Grammys, Daniel is.
Grammys on Monday, which Daniel's done a great job putting all that together.
Band. Yeah. So. And
if you have major predictions, update them at the Oscars. That's the biggest problem we're facing, is that a lot of you guys are not updating. You're just planning to wait till the home stretch. No, we want to know what you think right now. You can still change it up till a few hours.
Well, you just saw how quickly Tom changed and changed again while we were talking. So.
I'm such a fickle boy.
Yeah. So you're at work, you're watching us while your boss isn't looking. Easily update your predictions too.
Okay, thanks everybody.